Yeah. Okay. Now this is going to be very interactive. I'm going to do a little brief introduction, and then we'll get stuck in. So I've done. So my name is Dr. Jonathan Lee. Okay, there I am. I've actually been in this industry for 25 years. I used to be a personal trainer back in 1996, 97. And I went to university, studied nutrition and sports nutrition at King's College back in 98, 99. So I've got a lot of experience in this industry. Now, I did go off to do dentistry, so I'm actually a dentist as well. But I've always had my passion's always been with sports nutrition and exercise. I've also written 7 books about sports nutrition. So I've covered the topic in a lot of detail through my books. And in the last 3 years, I've been doing these seminars. A lot of the seminars I used to do were actually in halls, in buildings, if you like. But then COVID hit, and I've been doing a lot more online now. So a lot more Zoom meetings I tend to do, which I think is probably easier for everybody, to be honest. So I'm probably going to stick to doing Zoom meetings now. But yeah, anyway, that's a bit about me. Um, I'm just going to do a little bit of a talk about exercise first of all. Now, before I talk about exercise, I have to say that the human body is adaptive. Do you think that's a true statement? The human body is adaptive. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Is anyone going to say anything? Would you say that the human body is?
I just don't want to bother you.
Oh no! Just head in. So the human body is adaptive. So if you're living in a cold country, like if you're living in the North Pole, you'll develop very thick skin. Like Eskimos have very thick skin because they adapt to the cold. If you're living in a hot country, your skin gets darker because of the melanin. So the human body is very adaptive, and the same is very true when it comes to exercise and food and everything else. If you decide to do no exercise at all and just sit down and eat pizzas every day, then your body will adapt to that. You'll become lazier. You'll become more. You won't feel motivated to move. You'll obviously gain weight. And what else will happen if you decide not to do any exercise at all? This is interactive. Just shout out. Should I pick on somebody? I have to pick on someone if no one says anything. Okay, Claire. What would happen if you don't do any exercise, Claire? What would happen?
You gain weight.
Yep, you gain weight. You find it like how did you feel after Christmas? Did you feel motivated to go to the gym after Christmas?
Good point. No, of course.
Yeah, exactly. So you lack the motivation. It's hard to want to do any exercise because your body's adapting to being essentially lazy, and the opposite's true as well. So when you start going to the gym on a regular basis, it's hard not to go. You feel guilty if you don't go to the gym, or you feel guilty if you eat
I don't go to the gym.
I
don't go to the gym.
Yeah. So I mean, if you started to go, you'll probably start to feel that desire. I mean, most people I used to work with, for the first week or two, it was hard for them to go, and then after that, it became more habitual.
Hey, friends and lovers, my name is Manny Majanko, and I am so glad that you decided to log in.
I didn't get any of that.
Sorry. So
I didn't get any of that.
Yeah. So say that again. Okay. But yeah, so that's just like a general thing. Now, you've heard of this guy, Mark Tanopolsky. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No.
Mark Tanopolsky. He's a world-renowned professor and neuroscientist. Okay, well, he actually won a Nobel Prize for that. And he said that if exercise was a drug, it would be the most valuable one ever developed because there's so many benefits to exercise. And there's another guy, Dr. Kenneth Cooper, who said, we do not stop exercising because we get old, but rather we get old because we stop exercising. So exercise is really important for us no matter how old we are. Now, as we get older, it's even more important, but I'll cover that a bit later on. So I really just wanted to start off stressing the importance of exercise. Well, what's the benefits of exercise? What kind of health benefits do you get from exercising on a regular basis? Candice, I'm just going to pick on people. Sorry.
Mood, you got a mood. Like,
I can hear some music. Who's playing the music? Someone's playing music.
I think it's so.
So yeah. Let me just. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, much better. Thank
okay.
you.
So it's okay. What were you saying, Candice?
says improves your mood and your mental health and well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah.
For
It does.
yourself.
It does. Anyone else? Azad?
Yeah, if you do exercise.
All the answers are on the screen.
Yeah, there you go. They're all on the screen.
So you know, a regular exercise routine improves heart, cardiovascular health, brain health, mood, basically general well-being. And I'm going to go into detail a bit later on about why this is important and how this works. But now that we're all aware of the benefits of exercise, the next question is, which is the right kind of exercise to do? Now, this is where it gets a bit controversial for some people. I find that when I'm talking to people who cardio lovers who love to stay on a treadmill, they don't really want to hear about the benefits of weight training. And then those who lift weights all the time don't like to hear the benefits of cardio, running on treadmills and stuff. So I think if we can break it down a little bit in this segment, and we'll see that there's actually pros and cons to cardio and weights. And that's really what we're here for, yeah? So, you say a few words about weight training, first of all. Now, what's the benefit of weight training? Or what is weight training? What does that mean?
Lifting weights.
Lifting weights, yeah.
It's resistance training, isn't it?
Resistance training, yeah. It could be resistance training, yeah. It's the idea of, it sounds a bit obvious, but it is the idea of lifting weights. Those weights can be light weights, could be heavy weights. I'm just going to talk a bit generally about why we do weight training. What's the point of doing weight training?
Right.
Why do people want to do weight training?
It's aesthetics.
Build your muscles.
A lot of people want to, yeah, they think that if they look muscular, it's more attractive, yeah. Or more athletic, should I say, not necessarily muscular, athletic.
Yeah. Increase your strength as well.
Yeah, okay. But so it's about maintaining and growing muscle, would you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So what's so good about muscle? What's the big deal about muscle? Why is muscle such an important factor? Is it just about aesthetics, or does it have any health benefits as well?
Yeah, you can carry heavy weights around.
Yeah, so you get stronger. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to mention this lady called Gabrielle Leon, Dr. Gabrielle Leon, who hit the screen, by the way. The screen showing everything.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
So what does it say? What does that say on the top?
Muscle is the organ of
longevity. Yeah. Now she coined the phrase "muscle is the organ of longevity," which is very true. It's actually one of the largest endocrine organs in the body, and it regulates metabolism. What that basically means that, for example, for every pound of fat, we burn 2 calories. For every pound of muscle, we burn 6 calories. So we tend to burn more calories the more muscle we have, which is great for metabolism. It's also really good for reducing inflammation, boosting the immunity, reducing the risk of disease. And who's heard of a condition called sarcopenia?
Yeah.
What is sarcopenia, I said? You know what it is?
Sarcopenia is that when you can't actually it's not absorb, but you're having problems actually keeping the absorption level high enough of food.
Well, it's a condition. It literally means muscle loss. So
yeah, atrophy.
Yeah, atrophy, exactly. Now, over the age of 30, this is obviously assuming you weren't to do any exercise at all. Over the age of 30, we naturally lose 3 to 5% of our muscle every decade, and that number goes up over 50. So basically, over 30, that's when we are potentially at risk of losing skeletal muscle. You know what I mean when I say skeletal muscle, by the way?
Your biceps.
Yeah, so skeletal muscle is basically voluntary muscle. So it's muscle that we can contract voluntarily. So, for example, the heart is a muscle, but we don't have any control over heart contractions. It's involuntary. It's something that happens without us knowing. Whereas muscles that you can tense voluntarily, like you can tense your biceps whenever you want, or you can tense your abs or whatever, those muscles we tend to call skeletal muscles. So we can contract those muscles voluntarily. And they're the ones that we tend to work out in the gym. And we tend to lose that muscle gradually over time if we don't work out. Now, a lot of people don't know about this, but sarcopenia can have a domino effect in regards to health diseases. It can lead to a number of diseases such as obesity, tiredness, diabetes, hypertension, osteoporosis, arthritis, cancer, even dementia, and lack of libido. And there's a lot more other diseases. So people who get older and don't exercise are more prone to getting these diseases. Because as I said before, muscle has many, many health benefits. And if we don't maintain it, then we are going to end up with these problems. So anyone over the age of 40 here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we kind of hit, I'm 44. So, when you start to hit this kind of age, you got to take exercise and weight training more seriously because we are more prone to sarcopenia. Now, someone who's 15, they're still going through that growth spurt, so they're less at risk of it. Not saying that they can't get it, but they're less likely to get these kind of problems than someone who's, say, 50 or 60. And that's where weight training comes in. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. Is that all making sense so far?
Yes, it is.
Do you have any questions, anybody? Yes, no?
Not yet.
Okay. So the good news is that we can stop and even reverse sarcopenia by modifying our diets, but more importantly, exercising on a regular basis. Now, any exercise is good, okay, but weight training and resistance training has been proven to be most effective when it comes to reducing sarcopenia. And I'm going to talk about that a bit later as to why that is. But all the evidence shows that if you were to do a weight training regime on a regular basis, you're not only likely to maintain muscle, but you're also likely to reverse sarcopenia. So in other words, reverse any kind of health, any diseases that you may get later on. So what are the main benefits of weight training? Well, obviously, increasing muscle size and strength, that goes without saying. Increasing metabolic rate and energy levels, bearing in mind that muscle burns more calories per pound than, say, fat does. So if you've got more muscle in the body, you burn more calories. You know what metabolic rate is, right? Yeah, are we on the same page?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have a high metabolic rate, what does that mean?
And you're burning through calories quicker.
Yeah, you burn more calories at rest, exactly. So the more muscle that you carry, the more calories that you burn. In conjunction with having stronger muscles, you also have stronger joints because the joints, what I said about skeletal muscle, it's attached to the skeleton. It helps to move the skeleton around. So muscle is attached to the skeleton. So the stronger the muscle is, the stronger the bones tend to be. Also, weight training can help with balance and coordination. Okay, but a lot of people don't know about that. Like it can help you balance better because when you're training these skeletal muscles, if you train them correctly, then you especially when you get older, you're less likely to atrophy, and that means that you can support your bones much better. Aids with balance and coordination. Allows for physical change and control of body shape, obviously. So if you want bigger biceps, you just lift more weights, basically. You can't really do that with many other exercises. You can specify with weight training where you want to, which muscles you want to grow, and things like that. Now, what about mood? Why is it that weight training is associated with an improving mood? You feel better after going to the gym, lifting weights. Why is that? Do you know?
Increasing endorphins.
Mm-hmm.
Increasing endorphins.
You say dopamine?
No, endorphins.
Endorphins, yeah, absolutely. Increased endorphins, serotonin. Also increased dopamine as well. Do you know what dopamine is good for?
Yeah, dopamine is the chemical that's inside the brain that's responsible for pleasure. So anything like a nice cake, anything like that. That's dopamine.
Mm. And focus as well. It's also really good for improving focus. So that's why people say you feel better, you feel more focused. There's also something called BDNF. Who's heard of BDNF? Brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Does that ring a bell to anybody? No.
Brain-derived neurotrophics. Feel-good factors.
No, it's a brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's a chemical released in the brain, and it helps to increase memory. You should check out a book called Spark. There's a book called Spark. You can get it on Amazon. It's quite a good book, and it was a book about this guy who introduced exercise to pupils in school, and it showed that they were able to get better exam results if they do exercise on a regular basis because they're producing more neurons. And the more they exercise, you produce more in other words, your brain memory basically gets better. So you remember things better, you can focus better. And again, that's partly related to dopamine as well. So you can focus in school better, you can remember things better. And that's all related to something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So you get that with weight training and cardio to some degree, but more so with weight training. Obviously, it boosts your confidence. You tend to feel better when you're weight training. Some people I know who, when I was a personal trainer, they weren't very confident when they started their training regime, but after around 6 months, they're very confident, inside and outside the gym. Makes you look younger. Yes, it does have anti-aging qualities. As I said before, reduces the risk of sarcopenia and improves brain function and memory. Okay, so a lot of benefits to weight training. Now, any questions so far, or should I move on? Just shout. Anyone? Nope. Happy? Okay, I'll move on. So we mentioned muscle earlier on. There are 3 types of muscle, and this is very important because I'm going to relate to this when it comes to cardio. But the type of exercise that we do and the kind of weight training we do affects the kind of muscles that we create. Do you know that? Hello, is anyone there? Just say yes if anyone can hear me. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Can you all hear me? Yep. Okay. Good. So who's heard of the 3 muscle types? Type 1, type 2A, and type 2B or 2X. Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah. Actually, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this is very important. Now, the kind of exercise that we do affects the kind of it's responsible for the kind of muscle that we tend to grow. So when it comes to cardio, we tend to do a lot more like endurance training, things like jogging or walking or yoga, these kind of things. They tend to be more like endurance training. And I'm not talking about HIIT cardio. I'm talking about just like low intensity cardio. And that would elicit what we call type 1 fibers. Now, type 1 fibers are fibers that we tend to use on a daily basis. So, for example, if you want to pick up a pencil or you want to go walking, it tends to stimulate the type 1 fibers. And they are what we call aerobic fibers, okay? Do you know what aerobic means? It means that they're oxygenated. So people who do a lot of jogging, for example, or long distance or endurance training, like cardio, like running on a treadmill for an hour, that kind of thing, they would tend to generate a lot of type 1 muscle fibers. Now, the thing with type 1 muscle fibers is that they're really good for fitness, for endurance. So for exercises where you need a lot of stamina, type 1 fibers really kick in a lot. And they're also very oxygenated. They have a rich blood flow. So there's a lot of blood flowing through these muscle fibers. And you tend to find them a lot in marathon runners, people like that. They tend to have a lot of type 1 fibers. Then you've got the type 2A fibers. Now, the one thing I forgot to mention about the type 1 fibers is that they don't grow much in size. So although they're very rich in blood supply, they don't get bigger, okay? That's why you don't tend to see a very big marathon runner. They tend to be quite thin, yeah? Type 2A fibers, they tend to grow in size, okay? And they're stimulated by more intense activities like sprinting, weight training, football, things like that. Again, they're like a mixture between type 1 and type 2B fibers. They do require some oxygenation, but they also can survive without oxygen, which is anaerobic. So intense activity can actually stimulate these type 2A. Now, the good thing about the type 2A is that they actually do grow in size, so they can give you the aesthetics that you want. Whereas the type 1 then tends not to grow in size, but you do end up with that endurance. All this will make a bit more sense later on. Now, if you're anyone into powerlifting, lifting heavy weights, anyone do that here?
I love it.
You love it, yeah? What you tend to do when you lift weights, heavy weights on a regular basis, like powerlifting, heavy weight training, you're stimulating type 2B fibers. Now, type 2B fibers tend to grow quite big in size, bigger than the type 2A. So obviously, if you're lifting really heavy weights on a regular basis, you tend to get kind of biggish muscles. The problem with type 2B is that they're not very well oxygenated. So you don't have that endurance, which is why if you're a power lifter, you're not going to be able to run a marathon very well because you don't have that oxygenation. And you'll see that on the next page there. Can you see? I've given examples of people with high amounts of type 1, type 2A, and type 2B. Can you see the pictures on the bottom? Yeah. So this is where, I'm going to get into the cardio in a little bit. But you see the person on the left. Yeah,
is any of them better than the other? Is it best to be in the middle then? Middle
Sorry?
ground? Or is it best to be in the middle for someone like me, or it all depends on what you want to achieve and how you want to look?
It depends on what you want. I say that as you get older, we have to focus more on type 2 as we get older, because sarcopenia tends to affect the type 2 fibers first. And this is something that not many people talk about. The type 2 fibers are the ones that tend to go as we get older, and then the type 1 fibers. So, if you look at older people, let's say someone who's 70 or 75, they may not, I'm generalizing quite harshly, but if you look at a 75-year-old, for example, if they started to just all of a sudden start running, they're more likely to damage themselves because they don't tend to have a lot of type 2 fibers. And the type 2 fibers respond more to explosive movements. So if I said to you, Candice or Nick, I want you to run as fast as you can for 100 meters right now, just like that. It's the type 2 fibers that are activated. Now, if you say that to a 75-year-old who doesn't have a lot of type 2 fibers, they might damage themselves. And that's why we tend to say that older people should do more weight training. You walk around the block all day. Weight training is more important as you get older because those type of fibers are the first ones to go. Yeah. But generally speaking, I would say that it does depend on what you want. If you want to just become fitter, you want to be able to run a marathon or something like that. Obviously, type 1, do your endurance training, do your jogging, things like that. But from an aesthetic point of view, most people want the athletic look. So I'd say type 2A, type 2B should be the priority. I'll cover that a bit later as well. Now, so bearing that in mind, what's better, lifting heavy weights or lifting light weights?
I go for heavy weights.
Yeah, why do you do heavy weights?
Muscular endurance or muscular strength or power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Low weights, high reps, or high weights, low reps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So like time on the tension and stuff like that. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit now, actually. So weight training, there's three ways that you can lift weights, or should I say 3 effects of lifting weights. There's a progressive tension overload. Who's heard of progressive tension overload? Does that sound familiar to anybody?
I think so.
Yeah. So progressive tension overload is basically the idea of going heavier every week if you can. So let's say that you're doing a bench press. You can lift, let's say, 70 kilograms on week 1. Week 2, you should strive to go for 72 kilograms, and week 3, 75 kilograms. So you're going heavier every single week if you can. And the idea is that the heavier you go, the more muscle you lay down. Yeah, because as I said in the beginning, the body is adaptive. If you lift the same weight all the time, or you do the same number of reps all the time, your body ain't going to change. So you have to keep challenging your body by going heavier or or doing more reps. Okay, that's something called progressive tension overload. Then there's cellular fatigue, which is a bit like time under tension. Who's heard of time under tension? Does that make sense? Time under tension. Anyone heard of that? Simon?
Yeah.
Yep. So what is time under tension? Sorry. Yeah, what's time under tension?
Lifting the weight over a long.
When you go to
when the body's not in
failure?
when the body's under resistance and it's not.
So say that again. Sorry. You say that again. When the body's under resistance. Hello.
Sorry?
What's time under tension? What's time under tension?
Lifting weight and keeping it there for a longer time period.
Yeah. So there's that's right. So as you release the weight back to the starting position, it takes longer. Yeah. So there's a let's say that you're doing a bicep curl. Yeah. You lift up the weight, and then as you're releasing it, you release it slowly. Yeah. So you're prolonging that. What's the word? I can't remember the word, but you're basically prolonging the rep. And when you prolong the rep, the idea is that you elicit more micro damage. Okay. And the theory is that the more micro damage that you elicit, the more muscle growth that takes place during the healing phase or the resting phase. Now, that is very true, but it's not as effective as progressive tension overload. Okay. So if you have two loads, let's say you got person A and person B. Now person A decides to lift heavier every single week. Yeah. So you lift 70 kg barbell press week 1, 72 week, etc. And if you follow that person over 10 weeks, and then you've got person B who just decides to apply time under tension, generally speaking, person A would tend to get more muscle than person B. So say progressive tension overload is more effective for muscle growth. Not to say that time under tension is useless. Time under tension is also good, but it shouldn't take precedent over progressive tension overload. Okay. And in my book, which I'm going to try to plug my book a bit later on, but I cover techniques that would benefit you in both ways. So to highlight, to go over that again, to clarify that again, progressive tension overload is excellent for building strength and building muscle size, and time under tension is an adjunct to that. Okay, so what I would tend to do is, if you're going to do, let's say, a weight training session, who's ever heard of this, by the way? I'm just digressing, but who's ever heard of the idea of going to the gym and lifting heavy to start with and finishing light? Does that sound familiar to anybody?
Is it drop sets?
Yeah, you could say drop sets. Drop sets. That's like that's not really what I'm referring to, but I'm more referring to like if you go to the gym and lift heavy, well, you do your warm up and everything else. Then you do, let's say, 3 sets of heavy, like say 4 to 6 reps, and then after that, doing let's say 8 to 12 reps or something else. Now that's a very popular technique, and what you're doing there is you're doing the progressive tension overload, and then you're doing another exercise which is going to border more on the cellular fatigue. Now, cellular fatigue is much lighter on the muscles. It's lifting a lighter weight, but over more reps. Okay. So what you're doing is you're stimulating the type 2A fibers more than the type 2B fibers. Okay. Is that making sense, or shall I say it again? If I confuse anybody?
Yeah, that's clear.
Muscle damage is pretty much what happens whenever you lift weights. Okay. You basically get tears in the muscle, and remember what I said in the beginning. The human body is very adaptive. So whenever you damage muscle, it tries to repair itself by laying down more muscle. Okay. So that's how you grow muscle, basically: progressive tension overload, cellular fatigue, and physical damage to the muscle. How often should you lift weights? This is a very, very controversial question. How often should you lift weights? It's like saying how long is a piece of string, isn't it? Really, it depends on whether or not you're a beginner. It depends how experienced you are. I say as a rule of thumb, beginners should start off with 3 days a week. I'd say squats, deadlifts, and bench press, and keep it as that. If you've never done it before, and then as time goes on, you can start introducing more exercises. As a general rule of thumb, if you're quite experienced, you want to exercise each muscle twice a week, and each muscle you want to lift. On one session, you do a heavy, and another session do a light session. Yeah. So let's say if you're doing.
At what point you're no longer a beginner?
I'd say probably around 3 months. 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say rough. It's to me, it's all about getting the movement right.
Yeah.
I'm someone I've been doing this for 28 years, and I've had every injury under the sun. When I started when I was around 17, and I went into the gym and I just lifted the heaviest thing I could, and I ended up damaging my patella tendon. I tried to lift up a weight above my head. The heaviest, like when you're a kid, you do silly things. And I lifted up the heaviest weight.
Yeah, that's familiar to me.
Yeah, not my patella tendon, sorry, my AC tendon here. I pretty much damaged it. Grade 3 injury. I couldn't train for around 8 months. I just did silly things. So the point is that you want to get, you're better off starting light, get the movement right, get used to the exercise, and then you can progressively add more weights to it. And once you're at that stage where you feel comfortable doing the exercise, then I would say you can get to the intermediate stage. Okay. But yeah, when it comes to weight training, it's very important that you, once you hit the intermediate / advanced stage, you want to be training each muscle twice a week. So, for example, if you're doing a bench press on your chest, you want to do a heavy bench press. Let's say, for example, on Monday. On Thursday, you want to do a light chest session. Okay. You don't want to be doing 2 heavies a week. You'll end up burning yourself out, and you also get injuries. So, now,
as an ex-personal trainer, do you think, as an ex-personal trainer, do you think the technique is more important than the weight? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've seen people do like bicep curls where their elbows come up and they're not actually working their body. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So the technique is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what a lot of the time, what they're trying to do is they're trying to lift the weight that's too heavy for them. Okay. What I say is that when you're starting off, that's a red flag. That's not a good idea. Because you're basically what you're doing is you're compensating for the movement by using other muscles. So sometimes you can get away with it in the sense that you aren't going to get an injury, but you don't necessarily work out your biceps. Other times you will get an injury because you're going to use muscles that you shouldn't be using in a posture that is not natural. So, for example, I see this all the time. If someone's going to do a bicep curl with a barbell, and the weight's too heavy, they bring their back backwards, they bring the hips forwards, and they bring the back, and they put a lot of pressure on their spine. Now, then you end up with a spinal injury or a lumbar injury because of that. Yeah, but they're so interested in lifting this heavy weight, and the irony is that they're not really training the biceps because they're using all the other muscles in the body to try to lift the weight up. Whereas if you use a lighter weight and you've got more control, then you're going to be working out your biceps better. Now, there are some times you can get away with it if you're trying to push yourself to lift a heavier weight. Sometimes that can help, but you don't want to be doing that on a regular basis. It's more important to get the posture right. And do it that way. You've got less chance of an injury. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I see it all the time in the gym. There's people who do the exercises wrong, and they just want to lift heavy weights, show off to their friends. It usually kicks them in the ass after a while. Yeah. What about dieting? What happens when you diet? What happens when you diet? If you decide to go on a diet, what happens to your muscle? Do you lose muscle?
Muscle mass. You put on more.
Yep.
And actually,
I'm struggling to hear. Sorry, can you say it again?
What's it?
I can't hear. Okay. When you go on a diet, yeah, you're more likely to lose muscle. Okay. When it comes to dieting, especially if you go on a crash diet and you drop your calories too much, you're more likely to lose muscle. Okay. So if you are going to go on a diet, what you want to do is you want to maintain your weight training sessions. You want to make sure that you're still lifting heavy if you can. Generally speaking, the heavier you lift on a regular basis, then the less muscle you lose. What some people do is they go on a diet and then they lift lighter weights. That's not a very good move. Has anyone ever done that before? You go on a diet and then you start lifting lighter weights. Yeah. Hello. I'm going to pick on somebody. I'm going to pick on Lucas. Lucas. Can you hear me, Lucas? Yeah. Have you ever been on a diet before?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
And some
now, when you go on a diet, does your weight training regime change?
It depends on the diet.
Okay. What kind of diet have you been on before?
The last one, it was the 16 hours starving.
Oh, lean gains diet, yeah.
Yeah,
the fasting for 8 hours.
That was terrible.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't have the strength, do you? When you go to the gym.
Yeah, exactly, and I lost mostly muscle, not the fat.
Yeah. So you lose a lot of muscle. And that's the thing with a lot of diets. If you don't do the diet properly, you will lose muscle. And people don't say that.
That was completely fail for me.
Yeah. So what you want to do is, if you are dieting, let me just go on to my next slide here. A general rule of thumb: you want to lose the weight slowly. So when you go on a diet, you don't want to do no crash dieting. Really, the quicker you lose the weight, the quicker you lose the strength. That's what I say. So if you lose the weight slowly, then you can still maintain some kind of strength in the gym. No matter what diet you go on, you are going to lose a little bit of muscle. But we obviously don't want to lose much. We want to lose as little as possible. So what I usually advocate is lift heavy weights most of the time, because when you lift heavy weights, it's stimulating muscle growth. You don't want to lift light weights. You don't want to go, like if you're used to lifting 100 kg and then you go down to 70 kg, yeah, your body's going to adapt to lifting 70 kg, which means it will lose muscle strength, it will lose muscle size, and that's not really what you want to do. So I usually say, if you're going to go on a diet, make sure that your weight training is even more intense, because you want to do whatever you can to stimulate that muscle growth.
Do you think intermittent fasting is that a diet? Do you class that as a diet?
So say that again.
Intermittent fasting, do you class that as a diet?
Yeah, I mean, if you look on one of my other talks, I talked about diets. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter too much about what diet you go on. It's more about your how many calories you drop and your macronutrient ratios. So how much protein you're eating, how much fat you eat. Now, intermittent fasting is just one way of cutting calories. Okay, there's no right or wrong way to diet. But what I find is that people who take it to such extremes where they drop their calories by something like 40-50%, they tend to find it hard. So if you're going to drop your calories by, let's say, 15%, that's pretty safe.
Okay.
Yeah. I think if you got a moment, go to my website leangains.co.uk. I did a talk called "How to Get the Perfect Body," and I talk about that in a lot of detail. But what about if you want to grow new muscle? What if you want to actually add muscle to your frame? What do you have to do? Do you have to eat more?
Of course, add more calories.
Yeah, exactly. You can't train on an empty tank. Yeah, so you want to add more calories, but how many more calories? Like, if you go back like 20 years ago, people used to say, eat as much as you can, eat 5,000 calories. This is ridiculous because you just end up getting fat. But what do you say, that was there a certain optimum amount of calories that you should eat where you gain maximum muscle with minimum fat? Would you say that there's a figure?
A way to work it out, but I don't know.
10%. Okay. So if you can work out roughly how many calories you eat every day, add 10% to that figure, and that will optimize muscle growth, minimize fat gain. Okay. So people who are bulking, you want to go for 10%. Ideally, no more. You don't need to go higher than 10% to grow new muscle. Okay.
Right.
And again, the advice is the same: progressive overload, lift heavy weights, and that's pretty much it. There's also something called deload weeks. Who's heard of deload weeks or deloading? Does that sound familiar to anybody?
No.
How many people go to work?
Me.
Do you all work Monday to Friday?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you work 7 days a week? Would you work 20 hours 20 hours a day for 7 days a week? Would you do that? No? What would happen if you worked 20 hours a day, 7 days a week for 5 weeks or 10 weeks? What do you think would happen at the end of it?
Bad, I guess.
You'd be burnt out, right?
Burn out, yeah.
Yeah. Same thing with weight training. Yeah. So with every 8 weeks, you want to take a week off. You know, because you the kind of see what I do, the kind of training that I would advocate is very intense. You know, and you can't keep it up all the time without burning out. So I say that it's a program that I designed. Do 7, 8 weeks. Take the 9. If you're doing 7 weeks, take the 8th week off. Okay, completely rest for 1 whole week, and then start again. And you want to do that when it comes to these kind of weight training regimes. So incorporating deload weeks is a bit like taking time off work, basically. So let's move on. Okay, so I think we've covered weights quite a lot. Any questions about anything so far? Anything? Is it all making sense to you?
Yep.
It is, yeah.
Liz, are you sure?
Which would you do first, weights or cardio then weights?
I'm going to cover that in a minute. Yeah, that's a good question. Cardio or weights? Yeah, like you're talking about which one to start with. You mean?
Yeah, just because I've heard conflicting research. It used to be do cardio then do weights.
Yeah, I'm going to be covering that in around 10 minutes time. Yeah, I'll be covering that in a minute because I'm going to be talking about cardio now. So I'm going to be covering that. So, well, what is cardio actually? That's a good question. What exactly is cardio? What does that mean?
Low intensity, high duration.
Yep. So cardio. Well, cardio is short for cardiovascular exercise. It's any exercise that increases heart rate and respiration while using large muscle groups repetitively and rhythmically. In other words, you're increasing your heart rate, you're increasing your respiratory rate, but you're using your whole body basically. Okay. If you're lifting weights, you can sit down and say lifting weights increases your heart rate, but you tend not to be doing the whole body at the same time when you lift weights. With cardio, you are using the whole body. Okay, so that's really what cardio is, generally speaking. And as you said correctly, there's 2 types. There's low intensity or steady state, and then there's high intensity. So think of examples of low intensity cardio.
Low intensity. Yeah, just walking.
Yep, walking, jogging. You know, maybe riding a bike, things like that. Basically, low intensity is something that you can do for 30 minutes or more without stopping. Okay. High intensity is something that you can do for maximum of around 30 seconds. And after 30 seconds, you burn out and you need to take a break. Okay. So if I said sprint as fast as you can probably keep that for around 30 seconds. And then after that, you'll need to take a break for at least 20 seconds, depending on how fit you are. Now, interval training, high intensity interval training is the idea of doing that activity, then having a break, then doing that activity again, having a break. It's like it's circuit training, that kind of thing. Now, as we said before, who remembers about the muscle fiber types? Can someone tell me what they are?
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2.
1, 2A, and 2B. Yep. So what's type 1? What's type 1?
The marathon runner.
Yep. So what's so special about the type 1 fibers?
The fibers are lean. They're not fast twitch, slow twitch.
Yeah, they're slow twitch. So they tend to be very well oxygenated. So you tend to be really good for endurance training. So for the kind of stuff that requires, let's say, for example, if you're doing a jog or if you're running a marathon, that they tend to have a lot of type 1 fibers. Yeah. They do have type 2A fibers as well. That's the other thing. It's not like there's one or the other. There's always a mixture, but the majority would be like type 1 and some type 2A, and very few type 2B, yeah, for marathon runners. High intensity interval training is more type 2A fibers, okay, because it's more intense. And I've said before, the type 2 fibers are more for power kind of based, intense activities. So if you want to walk around the block, that's type 1. Okay, if you want to jog and sprint around the block, that's type 2A, type 2B. So examples of high intensity interval training is like sprinting, circuit training, skipping. Remember Insanity? That workout a few years ago? Insanity workout?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like, I think it was around 2010. Sean T. Remember Sean T? And he came out with this workout DVD called Insanity, and it was a 45-minute workout you can do at home, and it was basically just jumping around and really intense exercises for like 40 minutes.
Okay.
That's an example of high intensity interval training. Okay. What's so good about cardio?
Increase the VO2 around your body.
Increases what, sorry?
When you do cardio, it's not just the heart; it's the heart and the lungs and how they work to both get oxygenated blood around the body and then get
absolutely, yeah.
Out.
So it increases your fitness, basically, doesn't it? What does it mean to be fit? Fitness is basically the physical fitness is described as the ability to perform a task or activity without undue fatigue. So if you're doing a lot of cardio, you tend to be more fit. So for example, if I said, let's if you're very fit, then you can run around the block and you won't be out of breath at the end of it, Whereas if you're not very fit, then it might be hard for you to run around the block without stopping or without gasping for air, So it's the ability to be able to undergo some kind of physical task. Now, the reason that cardio is really good for fitness is because it does increase the blood flow around the body. Now, what's so good about blood flow is that blood is like a transport system. It transports oxygen to the cells of the body or to the working muscles. Now, if those working muscles don't get a lot of oxygen, then they're gonna fatigue very quickly. So cardio is very good for that, and that's why people who do a lot of cardio tend to have a lot of stamina. Also, it's good for recovery and endurance during your weight training sessions. Okay, so if you're doing weight training, and I don't know if anyone's ever experienced this, but if you're doing a lot of weight training and you don't do any cardio, what often happens after a while is you just become less fit. Yeah, you become stronger, but you become less fit. So someone who lifts lots of heavy weights all the time, they tend to run out of air. If they tend to get a bit fatigued if you ask them to run around the block a few times. Yeah, because they're not that fit. Yeah. They're strong. They can lift up, 100 kgs, but they can't do a marathon. Yeah. and a marathon runner can't lift up 100 kg. You know what I mean? So it's the reason that cardio is really good for helping with weights is because, as I said before, it helps with the blood flow, helps to provide oxygen to the working muscles, so that when you're doing your weight training, you can recover quicker. Okay, so it's got a symbiotic relationship between cardio and weights. So yeah, as I said, it increases systematic blood flow. Also, why is it that people say that cardio is good for immunity and exercise on the whole is good for immunity? Do you know why that is? Should I pick on somebody? Is he? Yeah. So what it also does. So when you have an improved blood flow, what also happens is that you get more white blood cells going around the body, and white blood cells are really good for repairing damaged tissue. So, if you have a disease or if you have some kind of infection or something like that, you tend to recover more if you exercise more. Coronavirus. How many people had the coronavirus? I did. I had coronavirus. I had it twice, and I recovered within around 3 days on both occasions because my immune system was really good because I was exercising regularly, so my blood flow was really good. When I got ill, white blood cells go to the damaged area, and you tend to recover quicker, which is why exercise is very important for preventing disease.
Yeah.
Is cardio good for burning calories?
Yes.
Okay. So if you were to do a half an hour HIIT session, how many calories do you think you'd burn?
The most amount of calories. It's only good if you keep changing it up, because, like weight training, if you keep running at the same pace every day, your body adapts to that, and then it can't. It's no good after that. It will improve, but you stay at that rate, so you've got to change it up.
Okay, but let's say that you did let's say a circuit training course class, or those classes that you do in the gym, like a 30-minute class, and during that 30 minutes you're running around and jumping around and skipping and everything else. You do that for 30 minutes. How many calories do you think you burn on that, just roughly, after 30 minutes?
More than you would run at a general speed. The HIIT training.
Okay. But let's say just a rough figure, like 100 calories, 400 calories, 1,000 calories.
200.
400 calories. Okay. More. I mean, I've got the answer on my next screen, but who thinks it's more than 400 calories?
I think it's 500.
Yeah. So half an hour HIIT class would be 500 calories.
Ah.
No, I'm asking. I'm not saying.
Oh, right.
I'll put the next slide on. So there was a study that was done. It took around three or 4 year study, and they looked at all this kind of thing, and they looked at hundreds of thousands of people, and they wanted to see roughly how many calories. And you can't be 100% accurate about it. Get an idea though. How many calories you burn after like a half an hour HIIT session? 300 calories. Yeah,
Okay.
it's not as much as you may think. A 2-hour jog, around 1,000 calories. Okay. You eat a Big Mac meal is 550 calories. Okay. Sorry, not even a Big Mac meal, just a Big Mac burger is 550 calories. So that kind of gives you an idea about how many calories you burn with cardio. It's not as many calories as you may think. Like you can do a half an hour HIIT session, and you eat less than one Big Mac, and you gain the calories back again. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's something to be aware of. Who's heard of afterburn? Does that sound familiar to anybody? Afterburn?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they tried to a lot of these companies, people like the Insanity, who came out with Insanity, they tried to sell it by focusing on afterburn. Afterburn is the amount of calories that you burn after exercise. Okay. So if you use the analogy of a car, you drive a car for let's say 2-3 hours. At the end of it, the engine's warm, isn't it? Or hot. The engine is hot, and you have to wait for the engine to cool down. You with me?
Yeah.
Same happens with the human body. After doing intense exercise for a while, your body is still kind of burning calories for a good 2 days or so, and those extra calories that it's burning is called afterburn. Yeah. So people used to make a big deal out of it. They said, okay, if you do a lot of HIIT cardio, then for the next 2 days you'll be burning all these calories. The truth is, again, you don't really burn that many calories. You're looking at, let's say, 40, 50 calories for the next 2 days, which is nothing. So again, it's not as many calories as you think. So I'm not saying cardio does not help you burn calories. It's just not as many calories as we may think. Okay. So what's more important, weight training or cardio?
I would say 50-50.
Yeah.
50-50. Yeah.
Balance it out, but then it also depends on how you
So
want.
what would you prioritize? Would you prioritize 80% weight training, 20% cardio?
Yeah, I would go for that.
Yep, me too. Especially as you get older. Yeah, definitely. Weight training should definitely be your number one priority. Okay, because it really does come down to supporting skeletal muscle. Now, as I said before, we lose skeletal muscle over the age of 30. So we have to do what we can to either protect it, grow it back. Now, as I said before, if you can prioritize strength training or weight training in your gym routine, I'd usually say 80% of your gym session should revolve around lifting or pushing weights. 20% should revolve around cardio and stretching exercises. Okay, so that way you kind of get good balance. Now, what's wrong with doing too much cardio and not enough weights? And I see this all the time in the gym, almost all the time in the gym. I see people running on a treadmill all the time, but they don't do much weights. What's wrong with that?
I think they might burn muscle.
Absolutely, they do. They do. They burn the type 2A and type 2B muscle. Okay, they don't have a problem with the type 1 muscle. They tend to have a lot of type 1 muscle. But remember what I said about type 1 muscle doesn't grow in size. So, they end up looking small. They end up losing mass. They can end up skinny fat sometimes, So it's something that we refer to as the interference effect. Okay, too much cardio will interfere with strength and muscle gains. So if you're out there lifting weights, in fact, who's ever done this before? Yeah, you do loads of cardio, then you try to lift weights, and you realize you can't lift the same weight as you did before. Has anyone ever gone through that before, or was it just me?
It should be like that.
Yeah, I did that. I went through a phase a few years ago where I was able to very easily bench press something like 120 kg, very easily. And then I went on a cardio spree for around 3 months. I just did cardio. And I couldn't lift 90 kg. I was really struggling to lift 90 kg, like really struggling, because I lost so much strength. So we say that too much cardio it's going to affect your strength, and that's for obvious reasons, because cardio is catabolic. Cardio sends a message to the body saying, let's break down things. Let's break down the fat and the muscle. It doesn't just say break down fat, it says break down fat and muscle. Okay. So bearing that in mind, how much cardio is ideal if you're doing, let's say you're lifting weights 4 or 5 days a week? How much cardio should you do? If you're going to apply the 80-20 rule.
2 days a week?
Yep, that's right. You don't want to do more than 2 days a week cardio, basically. If you're doing weight training, then you don't want to do more than 2 days a week cardio. Now, I think, who was it that asked a question about when to do the cardio?
On your day offs.
Yeah. So what they say is that you don't want to do cardio before your weight training session. That's the worst thing you can do, because you can do a warm up. Don't get me wrong. You can do like a 5-minute warm up, a gentle warm up. But to do like an intense 20-minute cardio session and then do weights after that is a very bad idea, because you won't have the strength. You won't have the strength to lift the weights. You should try it out yourself. If you don't believe me, try it out. Do a 20-minute HIIT session, and then, huh?
I've done it and I was really tired.
It's hard, yeah. I mean, you should. I can't do it. I personally can't do it. You can. It's more forgivable to do it at the end of a session than it is at the beginning of a session. So I would usually say, if you're going to go to the gym, if you want to lift weights, then do your 5-minute warm up, and then go ahead and do the weight training. And then if you want to, at the end, you can do cardio. Ideally, you want to do cardio 6 hours afterwards. That's what they say. The research says the best time to do cardio is either 6 hours before, ideally 6 hours after your weight training session, because that will you're more fully recovered. But if you want to do it there and then, it's better to do it at the end than the beginning. Okay.
So 20 minutes cardio would be too much at the beginning of the session.
Yeah, way too much. Way too much. You can, maybe if it's low intensity, maybe possibly low intensity, but even then it's too much, I would say. Yeah. The idea is that when you're lifting weights, you want to go in there fresh. You want to go in there and all your energy spent, because it's strength training, isn't it? It's about getting so you want to really challenge the body. If you can't challenge the body when you're half tired, and you will be half tired if you've done 20 minutes cardio, and also you got to think about it from a common sense point of view. The cardio, you're sending a message to the body saying, "I want to break things down." It's catabolic. So there's catabolic and anabolic. Does it make sense? Anyone heard of that? So catabolic means break down. Anabolic means build up. So anabolic is when we lift heavy weights and we're doing strength training, it's sending an anabolic symbol to the body, signal to the body. It's saying, I want to build things, I want to put things down, I want to build muscle. Catabolic is when you want to break things down, like cardio, you're breaking things down. Ideally, we want to break down that fat, but essentially that's the message. So if you can't have catabolic, anabolic at the same time, it's a bit confusing. So where are we? So when should you do your cardio? Yeah, so that's pretty much what we said. You do the cardio at the end of the session or 6 hours after your weight training session.
All right.
And any questions so far? Pretty much reached the end almost. Shall I show you some testimonials? Some of the people I've worked with. Yeah. So this guy is actually he's in America now. Yeah, it took him around 6 months to get from the first picture to the sixth picture. It's not bad, is it? This is my favorite one. This guy here. This guy's amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
That was 9 months. That was. There's a few other people I worked with. The one on the bottom left was my dental nurse. She ended up competing as a bodybuilder. Okay.
Wow.
And then with me, this was my 10-week journey. I was obese at the age of 26. So in my first week, I was 29% body fat, and I lost 12% body fat in 10 weeks. So that's that. Anyone who's interested in a workout regime, you can check out my book, Your Pocketbook Guide to the Ultimate Gym Workout. There it is. It's a little pocket. Well, that's not it actually. Where is it? Yeah, it's a little pocket book. You can fit into your back pocket. There you go. So if you're interested, just drop me a message, or you can head over to leangains.co.uk or Amazon and pick up a copy there. And I've got a few other books I've written as well. Currently I've got a diet book and etc. So that's it. That's all done. Thanks for listening, guys. Any questions?
Was there a book about the diet?
Absolutely, yeah. So are you talking about? Right. So what were you interested in? What kind of book were you interested in?
Diet.
Diet? As in what? Like a cookbook or about? I'd say that you lean gains. Lean gains. So you see the top left one. Lean gains. Yeah, that's the best book for diet. If you want something that's a bit more specific, then How to Get the Perfect Body. That will tell you about macronutrient ratios. Like if you wanted to work out, are you talking about how a book whereby you can actually find out how many calories you need and things like that?
Yeah.
Or just a book that's more general?
No, I actually would need like a plan or something.
A plan?
Like make a diet plan, yeah.
All right, yeah. I'd say How to Get the Perfect Body. That's the one that you want. That's very to the point. There's no BS in it. Straight to the point. Yeah. That's actually the advice I give in that book is advice that the professionals use, like bodybuilders, professional bodybuilders and stuff like that, professional athletes. Now you find that what I've found is that I'd say you've got, as I always say, there's a 0 to 100. There's 0%, which is people who don't train at all. 100% people who are professional athletes. Most people I would say are at 60%, but the advice I give is more like 90 for the 95%. So people who are like really serious about getting ripped. That's the book for you. How to Get the Perfect Body. Okay, it's all science backed. There's no BS. Any questions otherwise?
Good.
You sure?
Mention.
Did it all make sense? Did I confuse anybody?
No, it makes sense. I need to cut down on my cardio section.
Yeah. I'm not going to try to sell my books, but I'd say that the Your Pocketbook Guide to the Ultimate Gym Workout. It's very
Mm.
specific. It's a lot of people buy that one because I find that the biggest problem I find is that people go to the gym and don't really know what they're doing. You know, they're
Yeah.
kind of just playing around with it. And I don't want to sound sexist, but I find a lot of women, they tend to be afraid of weights. That's what I've
Mm.
noticed. I see a lot of them doing a lot of cardio. They might do the classes, but they don't tend to go in and do the weights. I'm generalizing, but that's what I've seen. My 20-something years of training, and I feel like there's no reason for that because I think it's a perception that we have that cardio is supposed to be the holy grail when it comes to getting ripped, and I think actually the opposite's true. I think people do too much cardio and they end up burning off all their muscle, so they don't have that sexy athletic look that they often crave. I feel that you're going to get that more with a good diet and weight training.
Sorry,
But
is it your book guide to the gym? Sorry.
yeah, your pocketbook guide to the ultimate gym workout. It's on Amazon. Amazon's probably the easiest place to get it from. But yeah, my website, leangains.co.uk, get it from there as well if you want. But yeah, that's actually one of my best sellers. Actually, I've sold around 3,000 books, 3,000 of those copies. The other books don't sell as much. So yeah, this is something I would advise if you wanted something to like some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? Like a framework to your
Yeah.
workouts. That's why I cater to everybody: beginners, males, females. Those who want to work out 3 days a week, 5 days a week. I've got stretching techniques, cardio techniques, things like the cardio regimes, things like that. So I try to cater to everything. It's all in a pocketbook, so you can put it in your back pocket. It's not like a big bulky book you carry with you.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I've got another talk in a few weeks on it's called Healthy Body, Healthy Mind. So we talk about brain health basically, which is and mental health. So if you're interested, anyone who's got Alzheimer's or dementia, I'm going to be talking about how to prevent it, and it is very preventable. It's what anyone says; it's very preventable. But I'm going to be doing a talk on that in a few weeks. So if you go to my website, leangains.co.uk, under the events, I'll keep you updated if you're interested. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or?
No.
Is it all good? Okay. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for listening to me for how long has it been? An hour and a half, something like that.
Thank you
Yeah,
much.
okay.
Very
Thank you very much. And
Thank
send me an email. By the way, if you have any questions,
you.
just send me an email, john@leangains.co.uk, and I'll get back to you. Okay.
Okay, will do. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.